Before the review starts, please take a moment to help out Mintheart. Click the link in the description to see how you can help.
So, you pretended to be my dad?
Don't look at me like that, kid. I did what any dragon would do.
No, you didn't.
Hey, I saw an opportunity and I took it. That's what dragons do.
No, it isn't.
You know what? I don't need this. I'm out of here. Enjoy living in Pony Town. I'm taking this pillow.
Somewhere in hell, Satan just sharpened his pitchfork and said to his secretary, "Do me a favor, Janice, and let me know when that guy gets here, okay? I just want to be ready."
So after the impressive lineup of episodes we got this second half, we end up with Father Knows Beast. An episode that's, well, a little underwhelming to say the least. It's not as bad as some other episodes, but it's certainly one that feels pretty lackluster. A dragon named Sludge arrives in Ponyville claiming to be Spike's father, and after hearing about his story, Spike tries to do whatever he can to relate with him. As the two spend time together, Spike seems to think he's finally learning about his true roots as a dragon, which leads to a little conflict between him and Twilight. But when Smolder comes in, she finds out that the bonding that Spike is having with Sludge isn't exactly how a parent and child should be bonding. That is to say, he's a fucking freeloader and is using his son for his own personal pleasure. The first major problem this episode has is that the pacing is way too fast. A lot of things end up happening in this story and it just feels like they happen too quickly. And because the events go by so fast, they're not able to feel fully developed. Sludge recovering, his confession, his story, the bonding between him and Spike, the arguing with Twilight, getting advice from Smolder, and the ending just kind of go by in a really fast 20-minute span. So the episode kind of just happens before you can connect with anything. And I might have been more forgiving if the episode wasn't so predictable. Chances are you figured out immediately that this guy was faking being Spike's dad, which is the main source of conflict in the episode. So because of that, the situation isn't nearly as tense because you already know so much of what's going to happen. And even then, there's a lot of obvious hints laid out that this guy is faking. From the holes in his story to the way he reacts to stuff to the tone in his dialogue, there's a real shortage of subtlety in it. One thing that really annoys me about the situation is that Spike doesn't seem all that shocked about this revelation. He may seem a little surprised and confused, but not nearly enough for a bombshell like this. And then there's the fact that he's not even thinking about his mother. Sludge mentioned how the last that he saw of his mom's trail was to a land of dragon hunters. Shouldn't Spike be asking questions about her or being afraid for her? Couldn't the episode be about Spike and Sludge searching for his mom, instead of just hanging around and acting lazy? It would have been one thing if Sludge mentioned the possibility she was dead, but it's never even brought up. There's also the issue of the episode completely disregarding continuity. Why is Spike suddenly having a hard time flying? They mention how these are supposed to be advanced flying techniques that he's never done before, but he was out flying and outmaneuvering a giant bird. He was literally going circles around him and even stayed airborne while flying upside down. And it's not like it's even one of his first times flying. Ever since he got his wings back in Meltdown, he's been flying almost non-stop in almost every scene. At least in Twilight's case, it was just one episode after she got her wings. Spike has been flying with no issues for about half a season, so making him have a hard time doing all these maneuvers is just stupid and lazy. And speaking of Spike, I just don't feel like the episode handled him with care. I know that finding out about your lost family would be a big deal, but Spike just acts somewhat out of character. The idea that he would just drop everything he's ever learned in the last 8 seasons because some random guy showed up claiming to be his dad is so unbelievable. He just allows himself to be enabled by poor behavior, and the explanation for it is a baseless claim from a guy that he just met. And with that combined with the very fast pacing of the story, his argument with Twilight is very undeserved. He jumps the gun way too quickly to judge her for feeling uncomfortable that this guy just came into her house, tried to take advantage of their hospitality, and is making a slobby mess wherever he goes. He just goes way too far when Twilight doesn't even say anything provocative. It would have made more sense if the episode spent more time trying to sympathize with his situation as an orphan, but the story is just too clustered to do that. And then there's Sludge, who is an absolutely detestable scumbag. I get the notion that we're supposed to dislike this character and that he was designed to be hated by the audience, but there's no joy in it. There needs to be something about disliking the character that's supposed to be enjoyable or satisfying, and there's simply none of that with Sludge. You don't love to hate him, you just hate him. Throughout Throughout the episode, he is deadbeat, annoyingly lazy, a freeloading sloth, and just takes advantage of the hospitality of others. Then it gets worse when you find out that all this time, he was a lying piece of shit who just took advantage of Spike's feelings for his own pleasure. This asshole has no self-respect whatsoever. He took advantage of an orphan and his deepest insecurities, made him into his servant for his own desire, and then tries to defend his position with the excuse that it's a dragon stereotype. Something that Smolder does not tolerate in the least. What makes this come across as so filthy and uncomfortable is that it comes across as an extremely cruel tease. Not just towards Spike, but the audience as well. Even if you knew that Sludge was a lying shithead going in, Spike didn't. And the entire episode is just watching him being used and taken advantage of. Not to mention that he actively manipulated Spike into acting rude and disowning someone who's been supportive of him all of his life. I really hope that this guy comes back, just so he can face actual consequences for his bullshit. But I think what really makes this episode lackluster is that it just feels like a light version of Dragon Quest under different circumstances. One of the main things driving the story is Spike learning what it's like to be a real dragon, like when he was with the dragon teams. And because Sludge was a faking piece of shit, all of Spike's experiences just come across as a lie. It just makes the episode feel completely pointless in hindsight. Spike's dad turned out to be a lying piece of crap, and he goes right back to knowing nothing about his origin. The exact same place that he was at the start of the episode. There is the moral about surrogate family and how you don't have to be blood related to be there for each other, but even that was something Spike already knew about since he stated it before Sludge lied about being his dad. I guess you can make the argument that it strengthens the relationship between Twilight and Spike by confirming how she's been a real parent to him, but because of how rushed the ending is, you don't make a real connection with it. And the scene isn't nearly as heartwarming as it should be. I can only think of a small handful of things in the episode that are actually worth coming back to. Firstly, even if it's part of a lie, I do like the design of Spike's made-up mom. It's a classic throwback to how the dragons were designed in the earlier seasons, and it looks like the animators were actually using her as a reference to Lauren Faust's original concept art. That's actually a pretty cool Easter egg. There's also a nice visual gag where it looks like they're celebrating Hearthwarming Eve, but it's really just being made up in the middle of the summer, with Rainbow Dash pouring salt over the window. It felt like the show was taking a jab at itself for all the times the holiday specials aired off-season, and the Pinky scenes are really amusing to watch. We see how she's a pretty good motivator using Sludge's slothy nature against him, pushing him to actually work for those baked goods. And then we see her having a fun time playing with Spike in a game of buckball. They're really fun bits, and we haven't gotten a lot of good Pinky moments this season. It's nice that they did that for Pinky, and I like it. But the highlight of the episode by far is the bonding between Spike and Smolder. Seeing Spike hanging out with another dragon is always a nice change of pace, and she just comes across as the sweetest and most caring older sister figure. She shows a lot of personal growth through her interaction with him, expressing sympathy towards his situation and standing up to a faker who tried to stereotype her. What makes it even better is that Smolder is just finding out that Spike was orphaned and never got to experience growing up with his own kind. She sympathizes with him not just because he was emotionally manipulated, but because of how confused he feels being a dragon who lived among ponies all his life. Plus, showing up that lying shithead was a great moment for her. She knows that even dragons aren't so cruel as to take advantage of their children's emotions, and she sets a really good example for her kind. It's amazing to see just how much she's grown since school days. She's practically the most developed character of the season and the Student 6. But aside from that, this episode was mostly an annoying mess. Aside from how light the subject matter was handled, the story just feels all over the place and badly executed. The pacing is bad, the way Spike's character was mishandled was really annoying, Sludge is a despicable scumbag, and the message it tries to tell just feels like a retrend of the one from Dragon Quest, except it replaces the self-discovery aspect with parenthood. It's really disappointing that if this is supposed to be the definitive conclusion to Spike's character arc, it just comes across as an extremely huge waste, with all the potential behind his character being completely thrown in the trash. I am holding out that his character arc will receive better closure, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see. So until next time, take care of yourselves and stay awesome. This is Map signing out.